DPReview is a leading site for photographers, and I caught up with senior editor Barney Britton in a talk about our industry.
The Cinema 5D virtual show is brought to you by B&H, the professional source for all your video needs. CVP, the leading specialist in creative cine, video and photo solutions. Tilta, arm your camera. Blackmagic Design, creating amazing solutions for film, post-production and television. And Nanlite, professional lighting solution.
Hi, I'm Johnny from Cinema 5D and welcome to our virtual show. Today I'm here with Barney Britton. Barney, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Johnny. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you're a senior editor at DPReview. So let's dive into a short interview because I'm very, very curious to see how you guys are doing these days. But before, a little bit about yourself, just to let our audience know about you.
Sure. Yes, I'm the senior editor at DPReview.com. I've been in the camera industry for almost 15 years now. I started out writing for magazines in the UK, and then I went to DPReview. And I've been living in Seattle in Washington on the west coast of America now with the company since 2010.
And a little bit about DPReview for our audience who are not familiar with the site. I mean, we are dealing mostly with video, and DPReview is mostly for photography, although you are entering more and more like covering video stuff. But a little bit about DPReview.
Of course, yes. DPReview has been around since 1998. It's one of the oldest specialist websites on the internet that's actually still in continuous operation. DPReview started out as a camera review website primarily, so it was news and reviews of new digital cameras at the point in the industry when things were really exploding in the early to mid 2000s. We do a lot more than just camera reviews now. We do a lot of lens-related content, a lot of general interest photography-related content. But I would say the core of our reputation, the core of our success, is still in-depth reviews and news of new camera equipment.
Before talking about the difficulties that our industry is facing right now, I would like to hear how is the pandemic is actually influencing DPReview as a website.
Well, we're very lucky being a website. I think this must be an extremely difficult time to be publishing a magazine, for example. Having to rely on third-party services like printing. We don't obviously have to do that, as you know. We can work from any machine, any laptop with an internet connection. We can produce the website. So we have actually been working remotely now for quite a long time, since almost the beginning of March.
And in terms of exposure, since everybody is at home, have you seen any the exposure to your content going up?
It's difficult to say. Our traffic patterns and our audience patterns follow very, very closely with what the industry is doing because our content is so closely associated with new products. So in a period like this where the news around new products and product releases have sort of slowed down, been a little bit delayed, we would expect to see a loss in interest from the wider internet in our site because we are so closely connected to that. We definitely saw a slump in users, slump in activity in March. It seems to be picking up again a little bit now.
Let's talk about the actual industry. I mean, in some ways we are talking about, or we're talking to the same seniors leading some leading companies in our industry. We know the difficulties, although maybe sometimes you talk a little bit more about photography and I talk about the video sides of the cameras. But all in all, it's extremely difficult time, and this difficult time comes when sales were already not so great. What is your impression when you talk to CEOs of companies? How do you translate it to what you see?
Yes, that's a difficult question to answer. I mean, without a doubt, this is absolutely the last thing that the digital camera industry needed. It was, as you say, the past few years have already been quite difficult for a lot of manufacturers. There is opportunity out there, and a mass change in public behavior, which this pandemic has created, could potentially point the way to some growth areas. People have had to change their behavior so fundamentally that I'm sure there are opportunities there. I'm sure there will be learnings that come out of this. But yes, it was already the case that the industry before this, the industry was much less profitable than it was 10 years ago, for many reasons, primarily the emergence of the smartphone, a picture-taking device that the traditional camera manufacturers don't make, and which everybody has in their pockets now. But there was still growth and there was still profit. I'm sure there still is and still will be in certain segments of the market, especially the more high-end, the sort of luxury compact camera segment, high-end interchangeable lens cameras. And not every territory is the same. China was showing really good growth and really consistent growth in sales for a lot of the manufacturers that I've spoken to, which I'm sure will have slowed as a consequence of the pandemic. But from talking actually recently to CEOs, it seems like the retail environment in China and consumer spending in China has not actually dropped as much as was feared. So, the industry's taking a hit. This has happened before. This is probably the biggest hit. But of course, it's not just the camera industry. This is affecting economies and industries all over the world at almost exactly the same time. So it would not be. I think I would be very surprised to see anything other than a hit at the moment. I think it's inevitable.
Do you see some danger to some manufacturers up to the point that they will simply disappear from our map?
Well, there's always danger, and I think some of the people that I'd spoken to in the industry last year and earlier this year actually had said, 2020 will be a crunch year for a couple of manufacturers potentially. This might be the year where they have to make quite difficult decisions about whether they stay in the camera industry and how what form it takes if they do. I'm talking primarily about smaller manufacturers. I'm not going to name any names. I think that would have been the case anyway, regardless of the coronavirus issue. But there's so much value that the big brands. Well, there's so much value in all of the big brands, historical value. It's built up. They're such important brands. So a Canon and a Nikon and an Olympus and a Fujifilm aren't going to go anywhere because there's so much value in the history of those brands. And also many of them are very diversified. If you look at Canon, you look at Fujifilm, and actually Olympus's biggest business is medical. Fujifilm's biggest business is pharmaceutical. Canon has medical. Canon has printers, scanners, all these things. Things that most people don't even know that they make. And that doesn't mean that if they have horrible year after horrible year of camera sales, that they won't stop making cameras at some point.
If we have to look for a, let's say, optimistic future sign, is there anything that you can see or sense after talking to those CEOs?
The conversations I've had this year took place at CES in January, which was really before coronavirus was on anybody's agenda outside of Wuhan in China. And then again, I spoke to several CEOs during the process of researching some content for DPReview on the effect of coronavirus. And what I heard that's actually very positive from speaking to a couple of people in very early March was that they were really, really afraid that whatever happened in the rest of the world, a massive drop in Chinese consumer spending was going to really affect their businesses because it was one of the only places in the world where they were seeing consistent growth. And actually that didn't really end up happening. The situation in China ended up stabilizing quite a lot quicker than I think they expected. The supply chain issues that they were worried about ended up being fixed, stabilized actually remarkably quickly. And online retail in China remained, and as far as I know, remains relatively healthy, despite the fact that obviously physical stores have closed and people are physically unable to move around. So it seemed like a lot of things they were worried about in early March from the Chinese side didn't end up quite being as severe or as profound as they had feared. Even the first week of March when I spoke to Kazuto Yamaki, who's the CEO of Sigma, he said, we didn't really think that it would get this bad in Europe and in the US.
Barney, in the time that you've been editor, you've seen, like us, how the industry is shifting from traditional compact cameras into mobile phones and so on. And we know if the mobile phone industry identified a way of growth, they will never let go, meaning they will invest even more money into the photo and video side of those mobile phones. So obviously the industry is changing. What is your take on that?
Well, it has had a huge effect on the consumer digital industry market. Obviously, as we all know, the smartphone has sort of progressively eaten away at sales of one of the most profitable segments of the market, which was compact cameras. And now, if you look at sales graphs now, almost no compact cameras are sold compared to the peak of the market in 2007, 8, 9, that kind of time frame. It's not all bad news. There are more photographers in the world now than ever before. More photographs are being taken now than ever before. The question, of course, is whether the traditional camera manufacturers can react and adjust quickly enough to attract those people into what we might call the traditional camera space. I think not all of them will. I don't think not all of them necessarily need to. Some of them, if you look at a company like Leica, for example, doesn't really need to play by exactly the same rules as everybody else. But a company like Canon, a company like Nikon, they really need to get the smartphone users upgrading to sort of proper full-size cameras, which I think they are doing to some extent. And actually, we're seeing so much technology now in newer cameras from these bigger manufacturers, and a lot of that is a concerted attempt to really try and pull people away from their smartphones.
Personally, I hope it's not too late from the traditional camera manufacturers to kind of react back to the development in the mobile phonography, let's call it, yeah? Because obviously, I want to believe they didn't give up yet, and something will come up that actually can be easy to use, high quality, and that you can share whatever you do very, very fast. I think this is a bit lacking here. I hope to see something in the future, who knows?
Yeah, and I've seen a shift in the past few years as well in the thinking of the executives I've spoken to. 4 or 5 years ago, or even longer ago than that, they would have said, we want to get people not buying smartphones. We want to get people not taking photographs with their smartphone. We want to just get them using our cameras, and they were seeing them as competitive devices actually. Whereas now the shift over more recent years has been, smartphones are inevitable. They're not competitive products. Let's see them as companion products.
True. Let's talk a little bit about mirrorless or DSLRs that can also shoot video. Of course, this is not new, but with the introduction of the new Canon R5, things look like going to be insane again, or kind of reinventing the wheel. And there's a lot of excitement around this camera. Anything that personally excites you about that camera or about cameras that can shoot video? I mean, you're a photographer, and there was a lot of time that photographers didn't even like or want this type of feature. I really want to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I think if you ask every photographer, they'll tell you something different. If you talk to a working photojournalist now, they'll maybe tell you that, hey, I'm being asked to shoot video now. I've never been asked to shoot video before. I have to shoot video. So they are quite hungry for those features, less, for the sake of creative development, more just because they're being told you have to go and get video as well. So we've seen big camera manufacturers respond to that need in the professional segment. The R5 would appear to definitely fit inside that segment. I'm not a videographer all that much. I've shot a lot of video. I've worked on a lot of video projects. Creatively for myself, I don't shoot video. It's not how I see the world. But I don't really understand people who completely dismiss it. It's a very different way of working. It's a very interesting way of working with a whole set of related but different skills. I should probably be teaching myself how to shoot and edit video right now. I've got lots of time on my hands. But the R5 is an example of a camera that, we know a lot about its video specs because that's what Canon has released by and large is video specs for now. We don't know a lot of its headline still specs.
I'll be personally more comfortable also to at least mention Fujifilm and Panasonic here, because it's not only about a specific product, but with Fujifilm, we've seen really almost like a quantum leap when it comes to video. That was a feature that was really not important for the camera manufacturer in the early days, and now it's really becoming a very important one. And Panasonic, which really pushing quite hard with the full frame mirrorless cameras that they have and adding more and more features. And really, I have to say, at least from the customer point of view, the selection that we have now it's rather amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And I spoke to Toshi Aida at Fujifilm recently, who heads up the imaging division there. And, even the X100V, this 35mm equivalent compact fixed lens camera, even that can shoot 4K video, incredible spec. Arguably, it doesn't really need to for that position in the market. But I asked him about it, and I said, is it really important to you that the video features that advanced go into a camera like this? And he said, well, yeah, it is really important because it shows that we, Fujifilm, are taking this really, really seriously. It does reflect what some of our customers need. And I think they see it as a way of future-proofing their products as well. We don't yet, the whole thing is about 8K, to go back to the Canon EOS R5. 8K right now is hard to view, it's hard to edit, it's hard to see what the use case is for 8K at the moment. But you can bet that in a couple of years, it'll become pretty clear. 4K was like that. When everyone had HD televisions, 4K was just extra. But suddenly, within a couple of years, 4K streaming broadband connections get so good that everyone's got 4K now, even if they don't realize that that's the signal that they're watching. So getting ahead of that is really important, and it's been good to see. It's been good to see Fujifilm catch up. It's been good to see Fujifilm leverage their experience in the professional cinema space. They're also making some great cine lenses now as well.
And when it comes to the user side, because you're kind of connected to your own audience, and at least we hear a lot of unpleasant stories. People literally lost jobs from one day to another. And it can also be that the industry will change forever. At least, let's not talk big words, not say forever. For quite some time, many freelancers will have to act and react differently. What is your perspective on this?
Well, I think it's absolutely true. I mean, if you look at some of the main kinds of professional photography these days, where you can make pretty good money as a photographer. You're looking at weddings, events, that kind of thing, and in a time when all those events are cancelled and may remain cancelled or at least heavily restricted for some time to come. It's people have lost wedding photographers and event photographers who had jobs booked from spring through to autumn. None of those jobs are happening. Like, none of those events are going ahead. So the photographers that I've spoken to who have been doing this for a while and have very good relationships with their clients. These are people who've built up a client base through word of mouth. So brides and grooms have recommended them to other brides and grooms. Those kinds of photographers who've really, really worked on the relationship they have with their clients, they're actually doing okay. The ones I've spoken to who fall into that category are actually feeling pretty good about the next 6 months, because the relationship with those clients is so good. There's so much mutual trust there that they've been able to work out payment plans. They've been able to work out deferred payments for the jobs. They haven't lost the jobs. They've been able to sort of rebook them. But I mean, if you're starting out as a wedding photographer or an event photographer, or if you're a contracted photographer or videographer, then yeah, this is very, very, very difficult. I mean, there are a lot of videographers that I know who right now just don't have any work. You might get some editing, but nothing's being shot. So for as long as video projects aren't being shot, you can't really rely on editing work, which of course you can do from home. So yeah, it's very, very difficult. I think, yes, anybody in that category is going to have to make a lot of short-term adjustments to their lives. But also long-term, who's to say that, you know, this is not the new normal to some extent? You know, I think that the trauma of this period of time for so many people in different parts of the world may end up being so profound that it actually changes the way people think about mass gatherings and changes the way people think about events for the next few years. We don't know.
But we can't end up an interview on the gloomy side. We have to end it up on a positive side. And you, as a leading website, is there any ideas or anything? Because I'm sure at least that's how it works for us. Thinking all the time how to present also the positive aspect, because it is an opportunity for some, for sure. Is there anything that you guys are thinking in terms of to bring a bit of optimism to the whole situation?
Of course. I mean, there are many cool reasons for optimism, I think, and some of them will probably sound a little bit abstract. And I'm not speaking for the industry now. I'm not speaking for DPReview now. I'm just speaking as a human being. I think one of the things that this crisis has shown us very, very clearly is the value of community and the value of support networks which go above and beyond legislative, local, state, and national governments. People just helping each other out. You know, right now there are so many stories out there of people going out of their way to help and to be supportive and to donate money and pay things ahead. You know, I've been doing a lot of this, paying friends of mine for things that I know I can't get from them for 6 months, but I'm paying them for them now because they need the money now. You know, that's happening all over the place. I'm not doing that because I'm a great person. I'm doing that because they're my friends. I want their businesses to survive, right? So there are a lot of people who've really stepped up, I think, and a lot of businesses have realized the value of their customers in a way that they hadn't necessarily before. And I think we'll see that a lot in the hospitality industry, for example. Some of the restaurants, cafes and bars that stick around will be those who, it turns out, were the most loved by their customers. You know, and it's those people who are maybe helping them out now through Kickstarters, through GoFundMes, through whatever. There isn't enough money out there. There isn't enough money in the public purse to save every business. It would be naive to think that. But those that I know of, and those individuals that I know of, who are the best at customer service, who are the best at customer retention, are the ones that I worry about least.
Barney, thank you very much for joining us. It's always nice to talk to you and always nice to hear your thoughts about how the industry is doing. All I can say is feel well, be safe, and guys, thank you very much for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.